Hello, this is Dr. Atta from DestroySocialAnxiety.com, and I wanted to talk about a few methods that are available and what is my experience and pluses and minuses of the methods available for treating social anxiety. So one of the methods I wanted to talk to is virtual reality, and the other one is biofeedback. And I just wanted to shortly present it. So virtual reality is essentially a method in which you create computer simulated reality in which you expose yourself to that. So how it typically looks is you put a special helmet in which you have glasses and you see the image of situations that are anxiety provoking, and you can slowly increase the level of exposure and be able to go from very low level to a very high level of difficulty. And this method is available. There are certain centers in everywhere. In the area where I practice, there is a university where they have a center for virtual reality. I had an opportunity to see that equipment a few years ago, and I'm sure their methods has evolved and the equipment is much better. But essentially, the principle is the same. You put in a helmet and you put yourself in a difficult situation. They have several modules. They have a module for fear of flying, actually, for seeking a job interview, for public speaking. Actually, it was tried also for people who have addiction problems. So in other words, when you are in remission from addiction, you expose yourself to situations which are difficult. For example, if you just stop drinking alcohol, you go to a party and you look around and there's alcohol here or there, and how you respond to it. And then, or cigarettes is the same situation. And the system is quite sophisticated. There is an element of vision, there's an element of audio, what we hear, what we see, and also there is even an element of smell. So, for example, if you have a smoke, there's a sensory piece that can resemble the tobacco smoke, which is very interesting. So, so what are the pluses? What are the minuses of that method? So first of all, the plus is that it's a very nicely controlled environment, and that it is very easy to quantify the level of stress, and it's totally controlled. So for example, there are no unpredictable situations. For example, if we do a live exposure, sometimes there are situations that are hard to predict. For example, if we're going and approaching a stranger on the street and we anticipate certain action that we're going to do, there could be a rare instance in which the response will be something we are not prepared for. That is not the case with a virtual reality. Basically, everything that can happen is controlled. There is no risk, there is absolutely no danger, and everything could be programmed to the and also customized. So that's another benefit, where according to your needs you can create a system in which is ideal for you. If you are a slow learner and very anxious person, you do it very slowly. If you are making big progress, you can jump, and in essence it's very, very easy to manage that process. Also, because of development of technology, it is getting better and better. And it looks more and more real with each year, and the experience is very close to the real life. So these are the pluses of the experience. So it's controlled, it's nicely designed, and it's easy to manage. However, the big negative of virtual reality is that it does not necessarily transform well to reality, because to some extent it is like playing a video game. When we are playing the video game and we are shooting at the enemies, it does not really transform well to reality. When we are able to shoot in the video game, it does not necessarily mean that when we actually are given a gun and you're going to be able to do it, that we'll be able to do it. There is a big difference between the assumption of being in a computerized simulated reality and the real reality, and we know it. Our brain knows it. Regardless of how advanced the technology is, at least for now, maybe in the future it will be different, the idea of a situation when we believe it is real is far, far from away. So the problem with that is, even if you get the highest level in the virtual reality program, it does not necessarily mean that if you go in a real life, you will be able to overcome it. From my personal experience, when I did the module on the airplane fear, I was very comfortable from the very beginning, and I did not feel the fear. It was actually pretty intense, but at no point was I experiencing the same kind of fear when I actually went to a plane, because in the back of my head I knew this is just a game, this is not real. So that's the biggest negative of the virtual reality program. Obviously, there are some big supporters of that module. It is used in a lot of situations, and I'm not here to say that it is good or bad. I just wanted to present, pluses and minuses, and what I like about it, what I don't like about it. I think it has its place, but in terms of social anxiety per se, it is unlikely that it's going to be completely effective for that purpose. The other method is biofeedback, which could be very useful in certain situations, and that is the idea of getting a connection between your symptoms of anxiety and being consciously aware of them. So what it means is that we are connected to a certain machine. We are able to see how our body reacts to stress, and by understanding that, we are able to execute some level of control over the symptoms of anxiety by seeing the fast heart rate, by seeing it's graphically presented, the level of sweating that we do when we are afraid, by seeing a fast breathing rate. We are able to slowly work on controlling it. And there are some examples of it going very, very far. However, it is a very useful method in a lot of situations, especially when the symptoms are prominently somatic. For example, let's imagine somebody is very anxious in public situations, and it manifests itself by sweating, for example. So every time I go anywhere, I start to interact, I get a little bit anxious, and suddenly I start profusely sweating. That's like a symptom that is easily visible to everybody, and yet it's a unique symptom, because it does not necessarily mean that I'm overwhelmed by all the other symptoms, but that just specifically by the sweating. And if you can focus on just that symptom in a biofeedback mode, very often you can create a situation in which you are much better in controlling it. And there are specialists that do it, like I said, from my experience, I found it very useful in certain situations, but those situations usually have mostly to do with specific symptom of the body and controlling that symptom. So that does not necessarily transform that well in generalized anxiety, where it's situation specific. Okay, it's not symptom specific, but situation specific, and it has its role, and it's very, very useful. I'm a big fan of biofeedback in general, but the limitation is that you are again in the mostly in the therapist room. You focus on that one symptom, and then when you're out there, it's a little bit different story. There are some people who combine biofeedback with real life exposure, and that I think is extremely useful, but it's not that common situation. In other words, you go out in the real world, you do interact with the situation you're afraid of, and at the same time you're working on controlling that symptom, and that can be done. There are special machines that are remotely connected to you while you're doing it, but it's not a standard. The standard is you are in the therapist's office, and you're working on the symptom itself on a regular and systematic basis. So these are my two thoughts about biofeedback and virtual reality, and I thank you.